Hi everyone, Gretchen here. Boy, it's been a long time since we have gathered for a class. So it's good to be here. We are going to be playing with stencils today. And I know a couple of people aren't going to make it or might be tuning in late, but that's okay because, like I recommended, you may want to just watch this class and check out the techniques and then, watch it again while you're trying them on your own, because I'm going to be using a lot of different things and shifting things around, and it might be easier for you to just take it in first and then try it for yourself, but it's up to you. There are a lot of flowers and things in your kit which will need to be cut out, so you could always cut while you're watching. I'll be doing cutting too, as you can see. But if you do start cutting, just make sure you remember to pay attention. I know sometimes I focus on what I'm doing, then I forget to look up at the screen when I'm watching somebody else. So okay, sorry, I was just adjusting the lighting to get a little more light. All right, so we are doing the slimline card format. These cards are 3.5 by 8.5. So they're a little smaller than, like this way, they're a little shorter than a business envelope because that's more usually about 4 inches. Although you could use a business envelope if you didn't have any of the slimline envelopes. You, of course, got your cards on envelopes in your kit, and Close to My Heart sells these as a set. It's a set of 15. So if you wanted the card bases on the envelopes, you can get them from us. All right, so this is the card we're going to start on first. And we're going to do a lot of ink blending techniques, which we have done before on other cards. And it's basically the same thing. It's just blending over a stencil to get the design. Now you can see here that we're going to be blending over this is kind of a leaf design. And you got your pack of 3 stencils. And I did make sure that everybody's pack had all 3 stencils in it. And this is the same scrap paper I used when I made my sample, so that's why it already has some color on it, but you definitely want some scrap paper. And I gave you a couple extra pieces of cardstock. So if you're not happy with one of your designs, you can try again. So the first thing I did is, this is regular white cardstock. We are going to do our stencils on these pieces of cardstock. Then we're going to trim them down, and then we're going to put them on top of the card. That way we don't have to worry about any ink getting on the card or making any mistakes on the card. Plus we have a little extra room to work on because I cut these bigger. So I'm going to put my white cardstock onto my scrap paper, and then I'm going to put my stencil centered over it. And we don't want our stencil to move. You don't have to have it exactly centered, but I'm just adjusting that a little bit. You probably, if I lift it a little, you can see it. They're thin, but they seem to hold up pretty well. I don't know what I started to say, but oh, we don't want our stencil to move while we're working on it, so we're going to tape it down to our cardstock. And then I also found out that the tape was wide enough that I can actually tape it down to both the our cardstock and the scrap paper, so none of it shifts on me. And what you want to do is use a low tack tape. So this is a removable Scotch tape. You know it's removable because see, it's got that blue core. So like I have two dispensers here. I have regular and the removable, and I know this is the removable because it's got that blue core. You can use painter's tape, masking tape. If you don't have a low tack tape, what you can do is take your piece of tape and you can put it on a piece of clothing. And depending on how tacky it is, you can put it on, take it off, put it on a couple times, and it'll pick up some of the fibers from your clothing or a towel or, you know, whatever, and it'll remove the tackiness a bit so it still holds it down. But when you remove it from your good paper, it's not going to rip. So I'm putting it, you can see I'm going to put it on the two long ends. You could put it on all four sides if you feel better about it, but this was secure enough for me. And what I'm doing is I'm putting it right on the edge of that plastic stencil over the cardstock, and then the rest of it is hanging onto the scrap paper. And the only thing is, you don't, if you want to use the full width of your stencil, you just want to make sure that you don't cover up any of the holes in the stencil. So this only has a very narrow border around it. So you want to make sure that tape is just on that border, not covering up any of those holes. And if you could just hold on for a second, I'll be right back. So sorry about that. I had to go find something. Okay, so sorry for the delay. So we're all taped here, and now our piece isn't going to move. So we can go ahead and do our ink blending. And I used 3 different colors on this piece. I used a light green, which is sage in this case, a dark green, pine, and a kind of teal color. This is our color of the year, so we'll only be able to get it through next summer, or this coming summer, I guess, and that's called Journey. It's a really beautiful color. So, you know, that's my color, guys. So, with this one, I used my Distress blender tools that have the sponges on them. You can use any kind of blender for this, just like with your other types of ink blending. You can use these. You can use the brushes, which I'll use on another card. You can use makeup sponges. I don't know, you know, what other kinds of tools you might have, but anything you use to blend ink. Okay, so I'm going to start with the light color. So I'm going to start with light green. And when I blend this, the more, you know, the more times I go over an area, the darker the color is going to be. However, you don't want to push your tool under the stencil, and you don't want to push so hard that the stencil moves. Now this is down really well, but like you see, if I was to come in over here and press, it might lift up and move, and you don't want to do that. So I found that if I put my hand over an area where I'm not working, it gives me even more security. And obviously I had a lot of color on that sponge, so that came out pretty dark. Now I've used these sponges before, so they are already inked pretty well. If you're using a new sponge, it's going to take you a while to build up that color. I'm trying to press a little lighter now because I actually don't want it to be quite that dark. And I'm just moving over different areas of the stencil and cardstock. And you're going to work outside of your stencil here, but that's because I cut the cardstock bigger. That's going to be cut off, so it's okay. Now, if you were working on a bigger piece and you didn't want the ink to go beyond the border of the stencil, what you would do is make sure you have a piece of tape all the way along the side to block the color from going on there, and then the color would go on the tape, and when you remove the tape, this would stay white. So it's just, you know, a matter of what you're looking for. So I'm just going over some of those areas again, making them a little bigger. And like, oh, I'm tapping the tool on the ink pad, and then I'm applying it to the cardstock and stencil in a circular motion, which prevents harsh edges. Now this is a circle anyway, so hopefully you're not going to get harsh edges. But I noticed that was really rounded, so I'm just extending the shape a bit. Okay, so I've got some of the lighter green on. Now I'm going to put some of the darker green on. And I don't want to leave, so you can see the difference there. I do not want to leave any white space by the time I'm done with this. Now, like I said, my sponges are already inked up, so I'm not having to ink them a lot, and I'm not having to put a ton of pressure. But you may have to the first time you do work on this. It also depends on how juicy your ink pad is. If they If they're not particularly inky, then of course you're going to have to put a little more, tap it more often, and maybe put several layers over. And I'm going to switch to the teal, and I'm working in the spaces that are empty. Now, the stencil is acrylic. It's a slick surface, so the ink doesn't dry on the stencil. Those are just some of my supplies falling over. If you touch the stencil with ink on it, you will get it on your fingers. So just be careful, because if you then get ink on your fingers, which it's hard not to, you then can transfer that ink on to your project. So you just want to be careful that if you do, you wipe your hands off, because I told you you can hold it down in different places. Well, more places have ink on them now. So if, I hold it down, I'm going to touch some inky areas, which means I'm going to get inky fingers. So I just want to make sure that I wipe off my fingers before I touch a good spot that's supposed to stay white, and transfer that ink. So now I have some ink on. So if you just have a cloth or something to wipe your hands off while you're doing it, that's a good thing. I'm just looking now to make sure I got all my areas. I'm just going over with the lighter green over a spot that I got some of that journey on that I don't want it to stay as much of the teal color. Oh, see right here. Yeah, I'm sure you can't see it too well, but the color is a little sparse over here. So I'm just adding a little more, and over in this corner. All right. So now we reveal our background piece. And when you peel your tape up, you just want to pull it up slowly, because if you pull it up quickly, even though it's low tack, it might rip some of that paper. So just be careful when you peel it up. And if you use a Scotch tape like this, that's a glossy surface too. So the ink will stay wet on that surface as well. And now you have ink all over this stencil. So you want to make sure you wash that off when you're done. I'm just going to put it aside for now and wash it off when class is over. We're actually going to use it again for the next card. But see, you can see that there's our lovely background. And these white spots, that's where your tape is. So like I said before, if you wanted to block areas, even if you wanted to block an area within the stencil, you would just have to put tape or something over it, and then your ink couldn't get to it and you'd have a white area. So was that clear? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on all the stenciling part of it, and then we'll put the cards together at the end. All right. So, so this is the next card. And this is kind of the not exactly, but sort of the reverse of what we just did. So again, we're going to take one of our pieces of cardstock, and I'm going to reuse my tape here. Well, actually, we don't have to tape this down. Sorry about that. We don't actually have to tape this piece down. So, because what we're going to do first is we're going to ink blend on this cardstock. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing we just did, but we are not putting the stencil on it first. We are just going to make a whole background of color. So again, we're just going to, and we're just going to add color to in different areas. And again, this piece is bigger than what we need, so you don't have to worry about like where the edges are so much, because we are going to trim it down. So I'm just making some areas of the light green. Now you can see the circles a little better on here, but when you add the other colors, we're going to cover up those lines, you know, the edges of the color. And again, just like on here, it's not going to be as noticeable. So this is the darker green. And again, my inks or my sponges are really inky, so I don't have to work so hard to get a lot of color. But the more passes you make, the more times you tap your ink pad, the more times you apply the sponge to your background, the deeper the color would be. On this technique, you really want some deeper color, because we're actually going to lift off this ink. And let me tell you, when you do this technique, you need a dye-based ink, which the Close to My Heart inks, the regular ink pads are dye-based. They need to be water reactive, because we're just going to use simple water to to lift off that color. So I'm just filling in the space, and I'm going back with some of the green to kind of soften the overlap where the colors join. Depending on what colors you use, you can actually form a new color by overlapping colors. Like if you were to use a yellow and a pink, you would get an orange. Of course, the blue and the green don't really form a new color, but it does form kind of different shades in the same color family there. If you don't want as much circular motion, you can just go back and forth. So it's not, you know, it's not particularly attractive in this form. A little bit of sponge had broken off. I was getting it off of there. What makes these backgrounds beautiful is when you then stamp over them, or cut them up into smaller pieces, or do this ink lifting, which we're going to do. The other thing you can do, which I didn't even try, or I didn't put on one of my demos. I had some extra pieces. I'm just looking for one. But you can now put the stencil over it and with a darker color and then create a pattern over it. And I will do that at the end because I have a piece that I can try that on, but I want to show it to you as an example of how it didn't work out so well the first time I did it. So after I do that, then I will try what I just said, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, but this we want to put aside for a moment and let it dry a little bit. So I'm going to move on to the next card while that dries. I'm just going to put the whole thing to the side. And we can do the next thing. So take my other piece of scrap paper here and get my next stencil, which is the chevron piece, because this is the card we're going to do. And I am done with the green inks. Oops. So I am going to put those away, get them out of the way for now. But we're going to keep the Journey, the teal colored ink. Okay. And we need another piece of cardstock. And some more tape. So again, I'm just going to take a couple of pieces of tape and tape down the short edges. And I'm making sure not to cover up the pattern of the stencil. Just put that tape on the edge. Okay, so now this shows that you don't actually have to use the whole stencil as part of your design. We are going to start out with some deeper color here on the left and get lighter and lighter and fade into nothing here on the right. Now you do want to be careful now that your sponge is all nice and inky that you really lighten your pressure where you want the lighter color. So we're going to start on the darker side and get that, the full color there. And this stencil has a lot of white space and very thin lines of the acrylic plastic. So I'm going to just put my hand down here as I am working on the left side, just to ensure that it doesn't move or buckle or anything. Now you can use as much light area as you want. Sorry, I'm getting over being sick and my throat gets dry easily. You can make the dark area as big as you want. You can make the light area as big as you want. I like this color, so I'm going to make it really intense here on the left side. I'm putting a bit of pressure, but not a ton of pressure down on the sponge. Because again, I don't want the stencil to move. So I am lightening up my pressure now as I'm getting towards the center of my cardstock. And you should be able to see that I'm getting lighter. And I would say, see, this might be a good one to go ahead and put tape on the top and the bottom so it doesn't move as much. So I'm just going to add a little more. So what I was saying is that I'm lightening my pressure on the sponge as I move more to the right. Now I'm going to put my hand down here as well. If you feel more comfortable, you can tape the whole thing. I'm just going to put my hands or my fingers on the edges to hold it down. Now remember I said that might get my fingers inky, so just make sure you're prepared to wipe them off. So you might want to start a little lighter. You can always go back and add more color, but obviously you can't remove color. And I'm not even going to touch the right side here because I don't want any color there. So now I'm going to look at it and say, well, this area here in the middle should have a little more color. So I'm going to add a little more, but that's getting nice and light. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can move more on a diagonal, which I kind of did on this one. This one here, I did the same thing, but I added more color to it. So you can see my darker area was a little bigger. You know, I lightened up here a little slight, and I did add color all the way to the right. It's just, yes, it's starting to fade out there, but there is color there at the edge. Whereas here on the sample card and on this one here, I'm just not even going over that last 2 rows of diamonds. All right, so, and you can play around and do this several times to decide how you like. You can use it. This is an ombre effect using one color, but you can do it's a gradation, but you can do different colors. Like if I wanted to go back to the greens, I could do, dark green, teal, light green, or dark green, light green, teal, or do a rainbow, or, just do different colors in different areas. So there's a lot you can do. You don't have to do just one color, and you don't have to do the random areas of colors that we did on the last 2. Okay, so I'm carefully taking up my pieces of tape. And that's how it looks without the stencil. And now we can do it again. Now be careful because this stencil has ink all over it. So if you touch it, you're going to get that ink on your fingers. I'm reusing my tape here to tape this back down to another piece of cardstock. would have been easier if I put this along the edge of the table, but you can reuse the tape several times. But just be careful when it starts. I mean, you want it to be low tack, but you do want it to have some tackiness. So just be aware when you're putting it down that, you know, if it starts to not hold your paper down at all or your stencil down at all, time to get a new piece. Okay, so we're going to do this one. And we're going to do the intense color in the middle and then fade out to the two edges. I mean, the card actually goes like that, but. All right, so I'm going to add more ink to my my inking tool, my sponge, and I'm going to start in the middle and put my intense color in the middle. And then I'm going to start to lighten the pressure as I work on either side. Now, because both sides are going to stay white, just be careful. Please be careful with your fingers. Now, what you could do, let's do this. This will help us keep that clean. You can put some Post-its down. Post-its are great for masking. And I want to make sure that I don't get any color past there. And I don't get any color past, say, there. So this will help, like if I put my hand down, I won't get that white spot inky. Now, if you do get the white spot inky, then you should just add more color to it and then, you know, try again on another piece. But so now I'm working to the right and adding a little bit of color, but not get too much pressure or not too intense. And then I'm really lightening the pressure as I move to each edge. Now, you might have hit, like, see, I hit the Post-it, so now I've got a straight line. I don't want a straight line, so I'm gonna remove that Post-it, and I'm just gonna lightly blend over that line, so it just is not a stark straight line. This one I did a little better. I didn't hit the Post-it as much, but it was a good, you know, it's not perfect because, like I said, you don't want that straight line, but it will help you protect that area. And if you do want a straight line, then hey, it's perfect. Okay, so I'm just gonna go back over the center again, get a little more intense color right there. All right, and now whoops, see, now that tape ripped the paper, but in this case it's okay because I'm going to trim that piece of the paper off. And there we go. All right. And so for our last card here, we're going to change colors. And that's what it looks like upright. I'm just going to turn it that way because that's the way I'm going to blend my colors. I'm going to move my chevron, not chevron, but diamond lattice. That's what the word I'm looking for. Stencil out of the way so I can wash that off, wipe off my inky fingers a bit. And I'm going to get myself a new piece of scrap paper and a new piece of cardstock and a new stencil. Okay, and I'm going to put my Journey ink away. And I'm going to use my sponge, or not my sponge, my blending brushes on this card. I just wanted to show you that you can use either type of tool. And we're going to use Distress Oxide. So I have picked raspberry, seedless preserves, and wilted violet. Now, we are not selling the Distress Oxides anymore if you decide you like those inks, but you can get them in other places that sell supplies. I know Joann's had them for a while. I don't know if they still have them because I haven't been in there in a long time. So, okay. I was just checking, and I still have some ink residue on my stencil, so I was just seeing which side that was on. Okay, this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my tape in the corners here because there's not a lot of border around the edges, and I think there's just a little more space to hold it down in the corners than there are along, the edges, although I am in the center going to add some here. I'm just, again, being careful not to cover up that design. And again, the tape is covering the stencil, the cardstock, and the scrap papers to hold it all down as one piece. Now this stencil, you can see it has a lot of cutout areas, and it's a little more delicate than the other ones. So you really want to be careful as you're inking because areas can pop up. So you just want to make sure you're gentle. All right, so I'm going to take my covers off my ink, and I'm going to start in the center with the lightest color. And I'm just going to swirl my brush onto my ink pad. And I'm going to then swirl the brush onto my cardstock / stencil. And I'm just making sure my hands, my fingers, I wipe the ink off of my fingers before I touch this because I want to hold the stencil down as much as I can while I'm working on this one. So I am going to start swirling in the center. Now, the brushes hold ink, but sometimes not quite as much as the sponges because they do dry a little. So although I did not wash these brushes between making the samples and tonight, and they do have some ink on them, they're not holding quite as much wet ink as the sponges. So I'm just going to have to go back and forth inking it up a few extra times to get the intensity of the color I want. But I really do like the Distress Oxides. I like the finish they have. You can do the same ink blending, without the stencil, like we did on the second card on these as well. But they're a really nice ink to work with because they're a little creamier. I mean, honestly, when you look at the cards when you're done, you can't really tell the difference between the two different inks. It seems like this is a little smoother for blending because it is a thicker ink. Okay, so that's the area I want to make pink. So we got these two kind of little flower bursts in the center and these, paisley-like shapes around them. All right, and now I am going to move on to the Seedless Preserves, which is kind of like a mauve color. The first one is a bright pink. This is more of a mauve. And I'm going to move into the next area on either side of the pink. And you can, if you had two colors, you could do this with two colors. If you could do it with more if you wanted to add more. If you liked one color over another, you can make, that area bigger. And I'm doing these two big leaf in the center, these two big leaf areas. And I'm actually going to go all the way up to this flower. So I'm not going to go do a straight line. I'm kind of just doing that and leaving the corners for our final color. Now, it's never necessarily going to be perfectly symmetrical with this size brush. If you had a little teeny tiny brush and you wanted to say, oh, I definitely want that circle colored, but not that circle, you can go in with a small brush and do that. But we're just trying to get a nice background color. So I don't care if it's perfectly symmetrical in every area. But you do want to make sure that all the open spaces are colored. So I'm noticing that this circle over here didn't really get any pink. And right here, the blend between the two, there's some lighter some areas I didn't cover with as much ink. So I'm going back in with my pink brush and just getting some of those areas because I want to make sure it's fully inked. All right, so now I did the right side. I'm going to do the left side, and I'm going to do the same basic area. This is a symmetrical design. The stencil is symmetrical, even if our inking is not perfectly symmetrical. So I'm doing, these leaves, this whole leaf area here, and then I'm going to go up in the center and color the flower. All right, now we can go with our final color, this Wilted Violet, which is a bright purple, and color those corners. And again, I'm just making sure that all the there's a lot of little circles in here, that everything is well inked, that the intensity of the ink is fairly equal in all areas of the stencil. Well, really the cardstock behind the stencil, but you know what I mean. There's just a spot right here that I want to add a little more of that seedless preserves in. And I think we're good. Now I did do these colors because if you're, I know we're getting close, but if you're still looking for a Valentine's Day card, these colors would look nice for that. You can do any of the designs in any of the colors. Okay, now I'm going to be a little more, again, we're going to trim this so we're okay with the tape, but I am going to be a little more careful about peeling it up than I did last time. See, I told you to be careful, but I wasn't very careful, and then I ripped it. Whoops. I ripped that. I just ripped the piece of tape. And there we go. Isn't that gorgeous? All right, I'm going to let you admire that. I am going to go rinse off my leaf stencil. So I will be right back. And then you can think if you have any questions for me about the inking process. Okay, so I just ran some water over my stencil and it just rinses right off. The main part will rinse off of the distress oxides as well, but if you don't scrub it, it'll leave a little bit of a coating, which does not interfere with the use of the stencil at all. But if you don't like that, you may want to just give it a little scrub while you're cleaning it. Okay, Judy is saying that Joanne still has this distress ink. So if you're looking for distress inks, that is a good place to go. And there's a lot of lovely colors. Okay, so We have everything inked now. And I'm going to show you how we do the ink lifting off of our off of the one panel here. I'm just grabbing a couple of acrylic blocks because they're waterproof or water resistant. You can wipe them off when they get wet, and they're a little bit heavy, so they give us a little bit of weight. And we're going to take our panel back, and this might be something you want to do next to a sink, because we are going to use some water here. You're welcome to do it wherever you want. But what I'm going to do is use my spray bottle, and I'm going to hold it over my garbage can so you won't see it. But I am going to spray one side of it so it's totally wet. So like I said, you could always just run it under a sink and then like maybe shake it off because you don't want it to drip. But because I'm sitting here in my office under the computer, I am just using my spray bottle over my garbage can, so hopefully I don't get much wet. But I will say, you do want to make sure that the one side of the stencil is totally wet, because the first time I did it, I did not get it all wet. I didn't realize it. So I'm putting the wet side down, and then I'm putting my acrylic blocks over it to put some weight on it, and then we're going to let that dry for a few minutes. And I'll show you. So this is the card that we're making right now, and you can see, hopefully you can see the designs of the stencil. This is the card where we inked over the stencil. Hopefully you can see those lines of the leaves. They're a little lighter than the rest of the ink. They look a little whitish, a little grayish, but it's the same design, but in reverse, because everywhere the wet stencil touches the inked background, it's going to remove some of that ink, which makes your design lighter. So this is the first one I tried. Now you can see I used a lighter color ink than that Journey. I used Glacier, which is a lighter aqua, so that the contrast wasn't as high. So that's why I switched to the darker color. But then you can only see, I mean, it does look really cool in the areas, but you can see here in the different areas, I didn't get the stencil wet in those areas. So the ink didn't lift off. I mean, I could still use this, but it wasn't the look I was looking for. So, but I did want to save it and show you. And you can see these spots here were drips of water, which my stencil was very wet. So I can actually see a couple of spots here. So you may still get those, but that's just part of the artistic look of it. And then if there was really like, oh, that spot is huge, I don't like it, we are going to add flowers to the background. So we could always make sure we cover up those areas. All right. So I'm going to just move this. Actually, I'm going to leave it for a minute. I'm going to trim down, all our panels. And they're going to be trimmed to 3.5 by 8.5. Now, unfortunately, my mini paper cutter that I usually use on the desk in front of you is not 8.5 inches long, so I can't trim them on that. But here, I'll show you on what I can trim. All right, so if we look at this one, and if we trim around the white edge. Now, you got the white tape areas, but I'm going to stick it up in my paper cutter and try to line up that white edge with the edge of my paper cutter. Now, I am very good at lining that up because I do it. Oh, actually it will fit. Okay, great. I do it all the time. You may not be as great at it, which is fine. So if you have trouble with that, what you can do is you can cut it with scissors, which actually is pretty easy, or you can try not to move this too much, but I want you to be able to see. You can line up your ruler with that white edge and use either your rotary cutter or your craft knife and now ironically that should have been easier, but I didn't get it quite on the edge. And then you can go all the way around. Once you cut the first one, you can line up. If you got it straight, you can line up your edges. And you can keep going with that, or you can go with your paper cutter. Again, it's supposed to be 3.5 by 8.5. So now I know this is 3.5. So now I can just put it on the 3.5 and I'm good. And I'm assuming this trimmed to 8.5, which it did. Now, when we put it on the card base, if it's a little off a little, we can still trim. But we want to do that on all the pieces we just created. Now, this one is a little tricky because we can't see that white edge on this one. So we definitely want to start on the edge that is heavily inked. And like, you know, once I have that edge straight, I should be able to get it at the top here, line it up at the top, and I'm all good. Now, you should be able to stick it in your paper cutter and trim it at 8.5, but my paper cutter is an 8.5 inch long, so I have to either move over to the paper cutter that is 8.5 long, or wide rather, or I can trim it there. And so there, I don't need to know where the edge of it is. I'm just trusting, you know, I know the measurement needs to be 8.5 inches. So I can cut it at that measurement. And then this side is 3.5. And so we're all good. This one, there isn't a short edge. Both short edges are white. So I have to trim a short edge first to fit it in that paper cutter. So I am going to, this side I can see the edge a little better. Oh, and I did get some color on there under the tape, but that's okay. I will live with it. And I'm going to line up my ruler against that edge. See, I did get, I was a little messy and I got some ink under that tape. It's probably because I reused the tape, so that would be an argument for just use a new piece of tape. I'm just checking here something for a minute. Okay, so this is a little tricky because because both, you don't have an edge to work on either side. So we're just kind of, I was just looking to see if like the center was conveniently like, you know, on the center or the point of any of these diamonds, which it's not, but we're going to pretend it is. So it's 8.5. So half of that is 4.25. So I'm sticking the 4.25 part of, just getting something to point with, the 4.25 measurement of my paper cutter. I'm lining it up with the center of these diamonds because that's where my deepest color is. And I'm just going to pretend that that's the center because it's, you know, it's close to the center of my inked piece here. And now I'm going to do my 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to switch back to my ruler. And I need a longer ruler too. Well, actually, I'm just going to use a second ruler. This ruler is 3 inches wide, so, and I need it to be 8.5, so I have to measure, I have to put the 5.5. If you just put it in your paper cutter at 8.5 inches, you're good. You don't have to do this math like I did. So there you go. So now we've got these two, and we've got the leaves. And now we're going to do the pink, which might still be a little wet because the oxides do take a little longer to dry. They're a hybrid ink. They have some dye ink in them, and they have some pigment. The pigment ink is what takes longer to dry than the dye ink. So sometimes these take a little longer to dry. So just be careful when you're working with it to not, you know, like really rub. All right, so trying to touch the non-inked areas. I'm lining up my white edge in my paper cutter. Whoops, I just knocked it out. I'm going to trim that. And then you put your cut edge at the top because that's your straight edge. Line up your side, which I did not get that one quite right the first time. All right, so now I can put this in this side. If you had a longer paper cutter, you can confirm that it was 8.5. And now my final side at 3.5 inches. Huh. And whoops, sorry. And now that one's trimmed. Okay. Okay, so we are going to take a look and see how our stencil is doing here. I got it really wet, so this is still quite wet. So when you want to try to lift that stencil without moving it too much. I did move it a little, but see, now you've got and the more water you have, the bigger those areas are going to be. Or you can go a little lighter, and then you might have some areas that aren't quite as inked, or ink lifted is really the term. So that's just a fun extra little technique you can play around with. If we weren't sitting in class here, I probably would have let it sit a little longer and dry more. But I had to take it off because now we have to have this piece dry so we can put the card together. So I am going to put it on another piece of scrap paper that's not quite as damp and put it to the side and hope that dries a little better while we finish the rest of the cards. Okay. All right. So now, oops, I get these out of the way. I have stuff everywhere, guys. Okay, so now we're going to do some cutting out of flowers, and this is going to take a while. So, if you have any questions about anything I did, oh, I did say I was going to try that other thing. Let me do that before I start cutting. If you want to start cutting, go ahead. Piece of scrap paper here. Okay, so I'm going to use this piece here that oh, I want my stencil. What am I doing here, guys? Oh. I put everything in all different directions, so now I don't know where it all is. All right, I want to make sure, I'm going to use the leaf stencil again, but I want to make sure that it has dried off. Okay, I think that's pretty dry. So I am going to put this over, and we're going to say this is just an ink blended piece like it was before we put our put the wet stencil on it. If we just inked up the cardstock with all our colors, and then we could. All right, I'm going to use a dark blue. I don't really want to go as dark as black, so I'm going to use sapphire here. And I'm just looking for a blue sponge. Okay. And I kind of keep my sponges until they, disintegrate and in different color families. So then if I see this tape really shouldn't be used again, but I'm just going to do this quick, so I'm okay. This is all dry and clean, so I can put my hand on it. So I was just saying I have inks and all, or sponges in all different colors that I can then reuse when I need a certain color. And I do tend to use a lot of the same colors, a lot, like, you know, like a black or a brown or a gray, which I use to edge things. And if you haven't used them for a while, the ink on the sponges will dry after a while. So you can, you know, if it's in the same color family, but not quite the same color, you can tend to reuse them. But if you're using a really light color, then I would use a new sponge, or make sure you only use your light colored sponge for that color. Okay, so as you can see, I went over the whole area with the sapphire ink. And my tape is no longer sticking all that well, so it's easy to take off. And the stencil needs to be cleaned again. And now you can see you can stencil over an ink blended area so that this one is over white cardstock. So you put the stencil over the white cardstock and then added different colors. This one, you ink blended the background of the cardstock. And if you don't want to ink blend, you could also use a colored cardstock. So you could just use a solid green or a solid blue or whatever color you're looking for. And then you could ink over the stencil with another color or multiple colors, and you get a totally different look. Does that make sense? Now you could do, like say you wanted to do, I'm going to move this ink stencil out of the way so I don't get ink on anything else and make a mess. Okay, so what I was going to say is if you wanted to use this technique where you are not coloring the whole thing, if you used a piece of colored cardstock, like say you wanted like a yellow, and you can, you know, or even like a lighter aqua, or, you know, anything, you could use that colored cardstock instead of the white, and you're going to get a different look. The ink, you just want to make sure, you might want to test the ink on that color to make sure it looks okay. And then you would have, you know, a dual colored piece without having to use two different color inks. If that makes sense. Like on this one, you know, you could use a really light pink, and then you could even skip. You could use a darker pink and not, you know, and then you can maybe start with the medium color and then do the purple and then do an even darker color, things like that. There's so many color combinations you can do, you know, once you start playing around. I really like how that looks. Okay, except for that one big drip mark, which I'd put something over, or I might cut that into smaller pieces. So hopefully that gives you some more ideas of how you can play around with your stencils. All right, so let's start cutting pieces out. Just looking for my little scissors. All right, so I was just reusing a piece of paper here. So I have some extra things on here which are not part of the cards. I do not waste cardstock if I can help it. Okay, so I am just cutting my flowers out here using, leaving about 1/8 of an inch border around the inked image, the stamped image. Doesn't have to be perfect. This sorry, train of thought in a million directions. Okay, so this ink pad is what I used. It's called Floral Celebration. It's a couple years old. If anybody would like to buy it, you can have it for $5. I only used it for this class here. And there's some extra fun stamps that I didn't actually use in the class, but I think it's, these flowers are kind of fun. And I tried to stamp the flowers in different colors. So because I knew not everybody has the exact same colors I used for the inking, so I didn't want to, go matchy and then, oh, well, you're teal, or you use more of a blue than a teal or whatnot. And it didn't look right because it wasn't the right shade. So I made some nice colorful flowers here that would go on a lot of different colored backgrounds. The only ones I did match were the purple and pink ones on that final stencil, but they're pinks and purples. So again, they would work on different colored backgrounds, even if you didn't do pink and purple, even if you did a different color combination. Pink and purple flowers go with a lot of different colors, right? These, the nice thing about these flowers too, are that they are easy to cut out. The shape of them are not overly complex. And the leaves are cute, but again, not hard to cut. Sorry, it's probably the most talking I've done in a while. So was the inking process and using the stencils clear enough? If you have any questions, you can ask me now. If you have any questions while you're working on them, a different day, just let me know. I'm happy to clarify anything. I love this little flower with the little loopies. So cute. There's these little tiny flowers in the stamp set that I thought would also be fun, like if you wanted to stamp them on the background. But of course, that's hard to do when I'm doing the stamping for you. All right, those are all the flowers I need for the first card, but I'm going to keep cutting just in case you didn't start cutting the same flowers I did. And if I cut everything out and then put the cards together, hopefully we'll have everything we need. Oh, actually, you're not assembling your cards, are you? Doesn't matter. It all has to get done at some point. Some of these flowers and leaves I put down with regular double-sided adhesive, and some of them I used foam tape on. So, so you want to have both of them handy if you want to do the same. Okay, I will tell you that I'm working on 2 classes coming up. I wasn't going to do an Easter card class this year, but I just saw the new catalog, which does not go live for customers to order from until March 1st, which is kind of a little crazy to me because it has all the Easter stuff in it. And Easter is early this year, so the timing is really a little tough, but the Easter stamps are so darn cute that I cannot resist them. And the Easter papers are also, there's some cute and there's some really pretty colors. So I am going to do an Easter class. Now, the challenging part of that is that getting the supplies. So I am going to put an order in tonight. So if anybody needs me or needs anything, let me know right after class. And also, if you have absolutely no interest in an Easter class, let me know, because then I'll say, well, I'll probably still order stuff for myself, but I won't bother. But I have to order the supplies. I have to get the supplies. And shipping has not been really easy lately. So I'm hoping that it comes, because then I have to, once I get the supplies, I have to make the samples, and then I have to advertise the class and, get you the supplies. So I am going to tell you, you were certainly welcome to sign up without seeing the cards you did on this class. So I hope you liked them. But there is going to be probably a very short turnaround between when I can get you a picture of the samples of the Easter cards and when you're going to need to sign up for it, because then, of course, I have to get the kits together and I have to get them to you. That class is going to be March 12th. So hopefully, if you did want to make some, you want to make the cards, you have time to take the class and possibly make some more. Of course, you'd need more supplies, and get them out before Easter. I hope that all makes sense. These little tiny flowers are a little hard to hang on to while you're cutting them. So that class is March 12th, and I don't know what the price will be yet, because it depends on, which supplies I use and whatnot. But they'll be both bunny and spring. I mean, there are bunnies. The bunnies are cute. But they will both be Easter and spring. So if you're not so much of a Easter card person, but you want to make some spring cards, you could always use them for birthday or just happy spring or whatever. They will be appropriate for both. There's actually 2 sets of stamps that have bunnies on them, and they're both cute. And so I'm trying to decide which one I like better. And then I'm also going to do another class in a couple of weeks with the February stamp of the month, which it is February, so you can see that on the website right now. I will show it to you before the end of the class. They're violets. They're really pretty. I have started working on the samples today, but my schedule got a little messed up today, so I did not get them done. I will show you the 2 I have done, and I'm going to make 2 or 3 more. So I will show you those when I'm done with these cards too. And that class is going to be on February 27th. Tried to space them out a little. So that's what's upcoming. I'm being asked whether I like the regular inks better or the distress inks. I think sometimes the distress blend a little better. They're a little easier for actually stamping images. I do like the Close to My Heart inks better. So really it's 2 different uses. So I guess what I'd say is if you think you're going to do more stamping, you're probably better with the Close to My Heart inks because they stamp a nice image with the acrylic stamps, and you can blend the inks. The only reason I like the distress inks a little better for blending is just that they're a little creamier and they seem to blend a little better. But if you do get your sponge or your brush inked up well, the Close to My Heart inks blend just fine. Especially, either way, you want a nice smooth cardstock that makes the blending easier. The other thing is the distress inks, like I said, do take a little longer to dry. So if you're more instant gratification and you sit down to do a card and you want to just get it all done and you don't want to wait for anything to dry and you don't want to use your heat gun to dry anything, then the Close to My Heart inks are probably also the way to go because they dry much faster. I hope that answers your question without making it even more confusing. There are, I know people have been driven crazy by the question of which ink to use. And I suppose it's the same thing with any hobby, because like with quilting, it's, also big debate about which thread is your favorite. So there's pluses and minuses of both, of everything. And I know it's hard if you're just starting out buying supplies, what to decide to pick first. Also, if you're going to stamp things and color them in, now I know you have the intense black, so you're good with stamping with black. But if you wanted to stamp with a color and color things in, like you couldn't, I don't recommend, like alcohol markers with regular ink, water-based ink, because it'll bleed. But if you wanted to use a water-based marker, or I think this, I don't need to cut that out. I think I restamped it because it wasn't a great image. I would say that the distress inks are not probably your preferred ink for stamping and then coloring in. I mean, they are permanent once they're stamped, but if you were going to use a marker, you could get them wet again and get a little bleeding. Although, really, that's the same for the other inks, so just ignore that. Any water-based ink has a chance of bleeding if you get it wet again. So I have quite a garden here. I didn't get the best impressions on some of those, so I had inked or stamped extra ones. And you might have an extra flower here and there if I stamped and I didn't get a great impression. So if you're looking at 2 flowers and one of them you're like, wow, that's stamped really well, and this one didn't, it's probably that you do not need to use the one that I didn't stamp well. I know it's shocking. I'm not perfect every time when I stamp. I was thinking about cutting these out ahead of time because I didn't know if you wanted to watch me cut, but I figured if you wanted to cut along with me and wanted company cutting, then maybe I should cut for you. I'm just looking here to see how many of each flower I need. So let's see. There's a new special right now for spring gnomes. If anybody are into the gnomes, that is on the website. You can check it out. No, I haven't sent an email in a while. Oh, there is a Valentine's Day special. Now I know at this point it is too late to get to order it and get it and make cards for Valentine's Day. But if you wanted to get ahead on next year's cards or use them for other occasions, there is a cute stamp set with a cute bear holding a heart, and some heart stickers and some cute paper and stuff like that. So if you wanted to check that out, it's called Love Notes, and it's under the promotions tab on my shop site. Like I said, I'm going to be doing the cards with the violets. And that is February's stamp of the month. So if you are interested in purchasing the stamps, just make sure you place your order before the end of February. And they are a set that comes, they started doing the stamps of the month, so you can still get them for just the stamps for $5 a set if you spend $50. But you can also get the thin cuts to coordinate if you're somebody who doesn't like to sit here and cut out flowers like this. I personally did not buy the flowers or the thin cuts for the violets because I didn't think I was going to cut too many of them out. I have cut some of them out, but I have found that they're fairly easy to cut out. But you can get them if you would like. I'm just looking for the violet stamp set so I can show you as I'm rattling on about them. The stamps are not all on there because I was using them. But all right, let me get some white paper so you can see that better. And cover up some of my flowers there. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So really pretty violets and some nice sayings. Sending love, grateful for you, friend, and thinking of you. They look really pretty when they're colored in. I will show you the 2 cards I have made so far. Whoops. One of my leaves has gotten mixed up with my scrap paper. I don't want to lose that. If you're looking for a particular theme for upcoming cards, let me know. If you're looking to learn how to do 12 by 12 or different size scrapbooking, let me know. I always love to do scrapbook layouts, but I know a lot of you don't scrapbook, so I haven't been doing many classes, but I'm more than happy to. I know everybody's collections of cards are getting pretty large, so other projects are fun too. This is the last flower I think I have to cut out. Excuse me. And then I have to cut out some sentiments. Just gotta get my scrap paper box here to put these in. My sentiments I am going to cut on my paper trimmer. To make sure I have nice straight edges. And these don't matter the size so much as basically I'm just trimming with an 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch border around them. They are not getting put on a specific size paper, so they don't need to be trimmed to a specific size. You could also, if you don't like the square box, you could also trim around them like we do the flowers. This one might need to be trimmed around. I don't know if I need another one. I got really close to that one. So I'll have to do some fancy trimming on that if I need it. I think I already trimmed those to the right size for you guys. All right, so now I can start assembling. Now we can do this one of two ways. We can decorate the stenciled piece first and attach the whole thing to the card. Or we can attach it to the card and then add the embellishments to it or the other pieces to it. So your cardstock should already be some ink on my paper cutter, which is mostly dry. I just want to make sure about that. So your card bases are already scored. So you can just fold them on the score line. Now it's 3.5 by 8.5. So it's actually 8.5 by 7, and then you score at 3.5 inches. When we attach the background onto the card base, we always want to start at the folded edge, because if we didn't quite get our measurements right when we trimmed them, and we have to trim either the stencil piece or the card, much easier to trim at the cut edge than it is at the folded edge. Now, this is actually, I happen to cut it perfectly right, so no issues there. I'm going to go ahead and attach these all so they are ready to go. Just folding all my cards. I kind of worked myself into a corner here by spreading out all my flowers like that. But I figured if I spread them out, it would be easier to see them when I was looking for specific ones for each of the cards. But I don't have a lot of room to work here now. Always good to burnish because then they lie a little flatter. Can make a stack of them and burnish too. I'll do that sometimes if I'm working in bulk here. Okay. Whoops. Veered off the edge a little bit there. Okay, so this one I want the, it's up to you, but I want the darker side to the left. So when I have my folded edge here like this, I'm making sure that bolder color is towards the bottom. And I'm lining up my folded edge. And again, I managed to cut it the right size, so I'm all good. This one, it doesn't matter because the bolder color is in the middle, so it doesn't, there is no upside down. Unless there, I don't know, was a spot you liked better or... and the pink one. We still haven't trimmed our ink lifted background because we are letting it dry. So we will assemble, just to give it the most drying time, we will assemble it last. Now this card, my piece is a little short on, so I am gonna trim the card in line with the piece of cardstock. And actually I'm gonna trim it this way a little bit too, because I have a bit of ink along the edge. So if you have to do that, you can do that. Whoops. Okay, now some of these flowers are, nope, okay. I was gonna say some of these flowers are pretty small, so I'm gonna use glue, but the small flowers I all tended to pop up. So we're just gonna end up cutting little pieces of, oh good, my piece is dry. So I can go ahead and cut that. All right, so I'm going to pick the edge that has the most clearly defined border that I can line up to cut. Now, this piece is, because we got it so wet, it is a little bit wrinkly. We're just going to want to make sure we put a lot of adhesive on it so it stays nice and flat. We've done this before. You can also use that double-sided adhesive, the sheets, and cut it to size, and that makes it stay nice and flat as well. But if we put a bunch of double-sided adhesive on it, it should be okay. So I'm going to do a double row along each side, and you know I normally put just a quick dash in the middle. I actually ended up putting 8 strips lengthwise on that, and then my 2 short pieces. So it is, oh, there you go. The shiny is the tape. So it is mostly fully covered. And I am gonna, again, line it up with the fold line. Using a bone folder will also help burnishing it down, and it's pretty flat. And the right size. Okay, so now we can just start putting our flowers down. So this is the one you can see, so I'll do this one first. And this is the background we made that is dark and fades to light. And we are going to start with our shimmer trim. Now this is the Journey shimmer trim. So this is the one that matches the ink. Now I did say that I made colorful flowers so they didn't have to match. The shimmer trim is the color it is, but hopefully it will coordinate with your colors pretty well, or you can use something else you have. And you know, even if you don't have the right shimmer trim and you don't like this color with what you have, you could always use a scrap of or a strip of cardstock or something like that, or a strip of patterned paper, or just leave it off. All right, so we put that about I think it was 5/8 of an inch above the bottom edge. Not crucial. We're going to use the Celebrating You sentiment. So that I attached flat on the right side of the card here, about 1/4 of an inch from the right edge, and aligned the bottom right, the bottom right next to the shimmer strip of shimmer trim. All right, so the first flower is the large yellow flower, and I'm going to put that on flat. So just putting a bunch of double-sided adhesive. I'm just turning the flower the way I like it positioned, and then attaching it on the left side there, overlapping the shimmer trim. I did not stick it down heavily because I'm going to stick a leaf underneath it, and I didn't really want to tack down really good and then not be able to slide this under. So this is the medium leaf that's stamped in the darker green, which is pine, and I'm just going to slide that under the flower there in the bottom left corner. And now I can really burnish it down and make sure it sticks. Okay. So we're going to do the pink, the orange, and the light green medium leaf are all going to be with foam tape. Trying to make sure you can see me here. So I am just lining these up to put foam tape on. This stuff is pretty sticky if you hadn't noticed, so you don't really need to put a ton on. Just in strategic areas, you know the deal. All right, now I'm going to peel the pieces off over my garbage can. Oops. See? So sticky, won't come off my fingers. Okay, and then we're also going to use the large leaf that's in the dark green, but we're going to put that down flat. So I'm just going to put the adhesive on that so we're ready to go. Because we're going to put the orange flower on next, and we're going to overlap that yellow flower, and I'm going to stick down the left side, not the right side, because I want to stick this big leaf down in the bottom right, and then I want to stick the smaller one above it, and I want to stick the tip of each of them under the flower so that so if you haven't stuck down the flower all the way, that makes it a little easier to slide them under. And then this pink one is just going to go down here. And then I put on some bitty sparkles. And you know, a lot of times I put glue underneath, and you are more than welcome to do so. But these things are so tiny that it's hard to get a little dot of glue under without, you know, making a mess. So I am just going to stick them on without the glue. All right, so I've got one over here in the top right corner. And I'm just going to push down on them really well so they stick really well. I've got one down here. It's kind of under the L. It's below the shimmer trim, but kind of in line between the L and the E of Celebrating You. I've got one over here, kind of to the right of the little pink flower. And I've got one up here to the left of the yellow flower. So let me lift that up so you can hopefully see them. Now the other thing I did, which you can add or not add, is add some shimmer brush. Now I know most of you have some shimmer brushes in a variety of colors. So you can use whatever color you have. You could do some testing. This is the clear one. So I don't know if you have the clear one, if you're interested in it. And you don't have one, let me know. Again, this is not required, but if you wanted to add a little extra sparkle, excuse me, I'm gonna have a cough drop here, which may alter the way I speak, but hopefully I won't be coughing. So this is totally not necessary, but if you wanted to add a little sparkle, what I did was I put them, added it over the leaves. Now this brush of mine is well used, so it's coming out just fine without squeezing. I put it all over the pink of the pink flower. I know you can't see it while I'm adding it, but I'll show you. I'll try to show you when I'm done. I put some in every single petal of this orange flower. And then I also added some into the dots. This is a really subtle thing, especially when you're using the clear. If you're using a color, it might be, you might see a little more. So like I said, if you like it, great. If not, you're not missing out on anything. Okay, so I'm drawing lines over all of the white lines in the yellow flower. Okay, so let's see if you can see this here. Okay, you can maybe see some shimmer on the leaves. It is not great on the flowers. So you're going to have to trust me it's there. And like I said, oh, you can see it there on the yellow flower and maybe a little bit on the orange. So it's a little more noticeable in person, but you know, it adds a little shimmer, but again, it's not necessary. Okay, so that's that one. Let's go ahead and finish the other diamond stencil card. So this one is going to be a vertical card. And again, we're going to use the Journey Shimmer Trim, and we're going to put it across about 3.5 inches from the bottom of the card. But again, that measurement is in no way crucial. I don't make up these measurements and then put them on. I put them on where I think I like them, and then I tell you, and then I measure and tell you where it is. Actually, I'm going to put this one a little lower because I want to cover up that ink spot I have over there on the right. So see, there's a convenient use for the shimmer trim too. So what I was saying is when I put them on a spot that I like, and then I tell you what that measurement is. It's not like there's a magic formula to it. Okay. So I'm picking out the flowers we need. Now there's no there are no leaves on this card. Okay. And then we need our orange Sending Smiles sentiment. And I'm going to go ahead and put that on first. And that is flat. So I'll put my adhesive on that. And then I'm going to put it about 1/4 of an inch below the shimmer trim and about 1/8 of an inch in from the side, from the right side. The other two things that are going to be flat are the two little yellow flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and put my adhesive on those. Now, they are small, so it can be a challenge to get adhesive on it. So if you don't like it, you can put some glue on it, or even a glue dot is kind of nice for something that size. I'm just moving some of these flowers up so I don't lose them. Okay, so and then I'm going to put foam tape on the pink flower, the orange flower, and then this tiny pink flower. So, of course, that tiny pink flower gets a small piece of foam tape. That piece was a little too big, so we're putting it on something else and cut a smaller piece. Okay, so take those backing pieces off. All right, so I'm going to put the orange flower on first, and that's kind of going to be a little bit left of center and overlapping the shimmer trim. And then the pink is going to be up to the right, to the left. The one of the yellow flowers is going to be up to the right. The other one is going to be to the left of the sending smiles, and the little pink one down below the S of the sending smiles, or the S's. And then we're going to put some more of our bitty sparkles on. So we've got one up here in the top left, kind of just where the color starts to come in. Got one here to the right, below and to the right of the top yellow flower. We've got one that's kind of between the sending smile sentiment and the yellow flower. And then I've got one down in the bottom right where the color starts to fade out again. Pressing down on them well. Oh, had another one. Ha ha ha. See, all that's left is the glue in there on the top corner. No, sorry. That's just a spot. It's not supposed to be there. Okay. So that's all we did in that. And this one I did not add shimmer trim or shimmer brush to. I just wanted to show you that you can always add shimmer brush to any card if you want a little more shimmer. Just wanted to show you that on the other one. All right. So let's go ahead and do our ink lifted background. I used pine shimmer trim on this one. It's really pretty. It's got a lot of colors in it. All right, so I'm going to put that one about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom edge of the card. Oops. Oh, I can move the card here so you can actually see it. All right. The leaves are gonna go on flat. So we've got 2 of these medium lighter green leaves and 1 of the medium dark green leaf. And the yellow flower, those are all going to go on flat. So I'm going to go ahead and put adhesive on those. Okay, and then the big glacier flower, the medium journey flower, the 2 tiny yellow flowers, and the small journey flower. Those all get foam tape. I like, may have noticed I kind of like putting the adhesive on all the pieces at the same time, because then they're just all ready to stick on. Make sure to cut small pieces of the foam tape for the tiny flowers. And now we can take the backing off. It's getting late. All right, so I'm going to take my big flower and I'm going to decide which way I like it. And I'm going to kind of hover it above where I want it. I'm working on the right side of the card here. I'm going to overlap that shimmer trim. But I'm not going to, I'm going to try to stick it down in the middle, but not stick down the edges. Because again, what we want to do is stick those leaves underneath. And so we're going to do, in the bottom right, we're going to do one of the light greens and the darker green. And if we don't, even if it sticks a little, if you don't put a lot of pressure on it, you can still pick it up. I'm just going to shift mine over to the left because I think I put it a little too far on the right for my liking. The other light green, I'm going to put in the top left. And then the yellow flower, I'm going to put in the top right and put it underneath just a little. When you have those down, then you can, really stick them down well. Then I'm going to put this journey colored flower kind of overlapping the yellow one. And then I'm going to put these other flowers on. Now, like I said, if you had a water drop spot that you didn't like, you can make sure that that gets covered up. Now, before I put those other two flowers on, I am going to put adhesive on my sentiment here, the Celebrating You. And I'm going to put just double-sided adhesive to put it down flat. And that just automatically covers up that without even trying. I'm just putting it about 1/4 of an inch to the left of that light green leaf. And I want to put that on first before I put the other flowers because I want to make sure that there's room where I put these yellow flowers, put them, if I put them too close, there might not be room for the sentiment. So there we go. And now, the sparkles. So one up here, one all the way to the right, kind of between that leaf and that blue flower. To the left of the flower, down here below the shimmer trim, sort of in the center of the card, and then one here to the left of the sentiment. So actually I ended up moving this over, so my sentiment is a little farther to the right on this card than on the sample card, but again, it all still works. And this was another card that I'm not going to show you because I know it's getting late, but I put shimmer trim. I keep saying my shimmer brush, the clear shimmer brush, I put them on all the flowers. So I colored over all of the flowers and the leaves in this one, and gosh, you really can't see it. It's too bad because it does look pretty. But if you had, like a light yellow, a light blue, I would try it out first before you are on scrap, before you, are committed to it for the card. But if you wanted to add some, see a little bit there on the big flower and the leaves. you want to add some extra sparkle. You just brush it on. Now, if you're doing it over these inks, do be careful because you don't want to get them too wet because like I said, the ink will run. So make sure like the sparkle is coming out. Try it on scrap paper. Make sure the sparkle is coming out, but it's not dripping lots of water. You want basically a dry brush, so to speak. Okay. And now we've got our other leaf background. And we've got lots of pieces. Okay, so we've got the dark green and the light green medium leaves, and those are go on flat. These next ones all go on flat. The dark green medium, the light green medium, and the dark green large leaves. One yellow flower, the sentiment, and that's it. Those all go flat. So I'll go ahead and put the adhesive on those. Whoops. All right. And then we have the two tiny pink ones, and I only cut out one, so I'll get that in a minute. The big pink one, one of those medium yellow ones, and the medium orange ones. Those all get foam tape on them. I'm just cutting out this other tiny pink flower. I didn't know if I needed it while I was cutting them out before, but I do. Okay. Oh, that has the double-sided adhesive on it. That one does too. The light is not hitting it in a way for me to see that shiny adhesive on it. Okay. Whoops. Having trouble tonight. Okay, so we need our shimmer trim first. So back to the journey, and this is going to go vertically about 1.25 inches from the left edge. Sorry about that. Now we want to put down our big pink flower first, but again, we don't want to really stick it down because we want to slide our leaves under there. So I'm going to grab my big leaf first and kind of, again, hover my pink flower over where I want it. I can stick that big green leaf down. I can stick the left side of the flower down while lifting the right side I put adhesive on the wrong flower here. I mean the wrong leaf. So I'm just going to fix that. And stick that under there. And then once the leaves are underneath, then you can go ahead and stick down the pink flower really well. I'm going to put down the sentiment, but I want to leave room for that yellow flower. I'm actually sticking the bottom left corner of that sentiment piece under that light green leaf. And then I'm putting the yellow flower so that it's overlapping the sentiment box, but also underneath the pink flower a little bit. And that's just going to depend on where you put it, how much overlap there is on any of the pieces. And then I'm going to put my orange flower between these two leaves and my other yellow flower to the bottom left of the pink flower, overlapping the shimmer trim a bit. And then I'm going to put one pink flower up here and one pink flower there. And now the sparkles. So I've got one up here to the top right of the sentiment, one here below the sentiment, one below the pink flower to the right of the shimmer trim, one above the top yellow flower, and then one over here on the left. And then we only have this one left to go. Now the only thing on this card that gets regular adhesive that gets attached flat is the sentiment. All of the flowers get put on with foam tape. So I'm going to do that. I put everything away like I wasn't going to need them again. And then adhesive on the sentiment. And this is Grape Shimmer Trim, which is unfortunately retired, but it was a good color for this card. So this we're going to put on a diagonal around the left corner. And your piece, basically, put it on the corner so that you've got enough from one edge to the next. Doesn't matter what angle it's at. Trim it. Be careful when you're trimming along that folded edge. You don't want to cut the folds. And there you go. I'm going to put the flowers on before I put the sentiment because, again, I want to make sure there is room for everything. Now these flowers were all stamped with, the Distress Oxide inks in the same colors that I used to blend the background. So you can see how they stamp. All right, so start with the big one. You do have to be a little careful because you'll notice, like here, you know, if I ink it up the stamp really well and I put a lot of pressure, you get a thicker line. Here I pressed down a little lighter, so the line wasn't such as heavy. So it's just a matter of just experimenting on scrap paper to kind of get the pressure right. The little ones, and this is true of any ink, little ones are sometimes a little harder because you have a big stamp and you're used to putting a lot of pressure on it, so it inks really well. And then you realize with the little stamps, you don't really need to put that much pressure on it, so you have to back off a little bit. So I'm going to put this up in the top right corner, just a little tiny, about 1/8 of an inch away from the right edge. And that's it. Oh, no, that's not it. We got to put our sparkles on. So I've got one that's kind of right in the middle of the card here between those two pink flourishes. One down here to the left of the purple flower. One down here to the right of the little purple flower below the big one. To the right of the big purple flower. And then one up here. Put it right over that dot. There's a couple of sparkles left, so if you wanted to add some more, if you lost some, you're good. So I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope when you sit down to play with your stencils, you're really going to like them. Let me know what you think. Hope you'll do more, experiment some more, because they're really fun, and you'll see out there's a lot of fun stencils designs out there. Very popular right now. Been popular for a while. I just hadn't gotten around to doing a class, so I hope you enjoyed it. Huh, interesting. I am just reaching for, okay, like I said, this stamp set that I used in class with the flowers, available for $5 if you're interested. These are the two violet cards I've made so far. So with the February stamp of the month, look in the next couple of days for an email with the full class set and all the details, but this will be on February 27th. And then, like I said, the Easter cards, which I don't have the supplies for yet, will be on March 12th. So that'll be a quick turnaround. If you think you might be interested. Or if you're definitely not interested, let me know. Because if you don't want me to bother, that's perfectly fine. Good, Cheryl. I can't wait to hear what you think. It is a lot of fun. And it's one of those that, like, you can sit there with all your inks and colors and just do a whole bunch, and then you can create your cards. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon. And don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions when you sit down to try it. So good night.